Well, my name is Alan Shaw. I'm living here in North Texas, about an hour and a half north of here in my parents' hometown, together with my lovely wife and my 3 beautiful children. So I'm so grateful to True Parents for that blessing, and I didn't expect to be so emotional about that, but apparently it's quite important to me. First of all, I want to note and recognize something that I really admire in you, which is your ability to focus on the positive. I'm really good at complaining. I'm really good at noting the faults of others, and there's some use, I suppose, in that sometimes, but it becomes quite a burden. And I quite admire your ability to focus on the good things that other people are doing, almost to the exclusion of mentioning anything bad that anyone has done. And I really appreciate that, and I consider that quite an example for myself, so I'm very grateful. To my question, I wanted to mention I was moved and touched by your mention of Jesus and the ways in which he's been misunderstood and misrepresented. I grew up in a Christian home. My father's a minister, my brother's a minister, and had a constant idea about Jesus, and True Fathers sort of helped me to see a whole new depth of Jesus and who he really was. And especially the number one thing about Jesus, that he was able to pioneer the concept of being God's son. Right? Of all the things we might note that he was not able to do in his life, he nailed that down. And True Father showed me that, as I'm sure he showed many people. Jesus spent his whole life talking about God and trying to help people understand God's heart and God's love and how we relate to God. When Jesus left this world, his disciples spent a lot of time talking about him. Jesus had spent his whole life talking about God, and his disciples couldn't get over the idea of Jesus. And over the centuries, that came to affect our understanding of who Jesus was and what his message was, to the point that we came to see Jesus as being an eternal, pre-existent being who originally existed with God before Adam and Eve. Right? All these things. So I am thinking now about Father. Father has taught me so much about God and God's love, and my relationship to God and who he is. So now I think about how Father's legacy will continue. And so I wanted to ask you, as someone who really knows Father, and who I suspect loves Father even more than I do, and that is, how do you see Father's legacy? How do you anticipate that people will view True Father 50 years or 100 years from now? I think Jesus was fully worthy of every good thing and great thing that's ever been said about him, all the praise that's ever come to him. He's fully worthy as his Father. And I want to hear from you how you see Father's legacy developing over the next half century or century or beyond. Thank you.
Wow. First of all, I love your haircut, by the way. You're making me very envious. I'm right about to shave my head again. But that's a really deep and absolutely essential question. I mean, I think with that issue, it has to be. I think it's pretty clear. It's important to see how Father sees himself. That's very important. And so, with Father, as you know, even before, especially towards before the Son, Father was proclaiming the God of night, the God of day. He was proclaiming at a major event we had in, I believe it was in Incheon. He proclaimed very clearly that, that he, as God's Son, is different from everybody else. He also said that he is now the substantial God. He is completely one with God. So I think it's very important to understand that in the beginning years, when we were having many debates with Christianity, Father's own messianic self-identity was, it was at a certain stage in his own understanding. The question is, with any type of scholarly investigation, so to speak, of messianic self-consciousness, is at that stage in Christ's life, how much does he actually, through his own human intellect, understand about who he is? What's fascinating is that, and of course more has to be looked at in terms of this, but what's fascinating is as the years went on and as Father had proclaimed after the coronation ceremony in 2001, and after the entrance into the palace as God's dwelling place, and then being the substantial one with God, substantially on earth, and then being God's substantial representative on earth, or being the substantial God on earth, and then most recently, of course, the God of night and the God of day. I did a sermon on that, I think a couple months ago. But I think it's, in order to answer your question, it's very important because Father had such a, he did, compared to Jesus, I mean, he lived obviously much longer. And he got through the tortures and the assassination attempts, etc., all that. And he did survive. He did survive to push towards God's Chanegu and give us the way. And so that's what's so, of course, that's another thing of what's so exciting in terms of understanding how Father's own self-consciousness, his own messianic self-consciousness started to blossom. And I think that going forth, we're going to, of course, understand more deeply as we look at Father, just in terms of periods of how Father talks about himself, mentions himself in relation to God. But what I've definitely noticed is that prior to his ascension, Father was really walking in total oneness with God. Many times he would say he has to chastise God, even get upset at him and correct him, and he was. I remember many times Father was saying, God absolutely needs me, on this planet. God cannot do things without me. And this seems, in human perspective, very arrogant or very, boastful. But if that person truly is the Messiah and is completely one with God, then it actually makes sense. He does need him fully. Just as the mind needs and the body are one, the dual characters need each other. Same thing. Just as I need my spouse, she needs me. So I think in terms of as you referred to, True Father's legacy going forward in a few centuries ahead. Of course, I can't see, absolutely, but I definitely think that we will start understanding, the nature of Father's own humanity, of course, but also the nature of his divinity as well, and how that is combined and how that blooms over the course of his life in his words, in his own description of himself and his relation to God. I think that is a fascinating thing to delve into. But I think that in order to, of course, be fair to Father, is, of course, getting back to what he spoke about his own relationship to God and his own notions of his own self-identity. I think that's really the key, where in which we would focus to see that. Does that? I'm sorry. Does that?
That's a great answer. No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Love your haircut, by the way.